close? Does it need to be?
I think that's fine. I'm just
That's fine. Okay.
This is the first time I've been in this room. Yeah, same here.
Well, the two that were in here when we first got in here, but that see that they let out their faculty. No, I don't see any. I'm kind of wish there were because they can tell us what from their perspective. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Christopher Vallandigham. I'm the Faculty Services Librarian at the University of Florida College of Law. And my co-speaker is Jim Sherwood. He's Faculty Services Librarian at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Now, there's been a number. When I saw the final program, I noticed that there's a number of talks that dealt with how do you integrate technology into classroom? How do you get people in the law school to use this technology? What kind of technology is best to use in a classroom? We're going to take, in this talk, we're going to take it from a reference librarian perspective. How do we as reference librarians, and both of us, even though we're faculty services librarians, we're part of the reference desk, how do we encourage faculty to use online resources and whether we should encourage them to use online resources? Now, I've been at the reference librarian at the University of Florida since I was in law school. I started my third year, and I practiced immigration law briefly. Then they invited me to come back to the University of Florida full time. So I've been doing it for about 4.5 years. And one of the first assignments that they gave me when I took over the job as electronic resources information librarian was to head the committee to encourage the faculty use of online resources. And the library director, who has spent a lot of money in recent past buying electronic resources, felt that nobody was using them. And the reason why nobody was using them is that the faculty didn't know we had them. And so it was our job on the committee to somehow encourage them to use these. And if they didn't use them, then we should question whether we should purchase them. Okay. Now, one of the first things I did on the committee was dissolve it. That was my first thing that I did. And the reason why, there's several reasons why, is I thought the results of the committee work would be fairly predictable. How to get people to do anything. I didn't think that the committee would really help in that manner. And I really felt that as a reference librarian, I'm not an ad agent at Park Avenue. My job was not to sell a product. Therefore, I kind of resisted the notion that I had to go there and knock on people's door, tell them that they should use Matthew Bender online. And third, why should we promote electronic resources? We don't promote print resources. When we get, at my library, we get new books in, we post them on, we send out an email to all faculty members and staff. We got these new books in. We put them on a new bookshelf, and we hold them there for a couple months so they can go there and see what we got. But other than that, I don't go and knock on people's door, tell them, you got to use this treatise we just came on, this monograph. Now, if I don't do that for print, why should I do it for electronic? So, what did I do at Florida? Okay, I did the following. I posted announcements on the faculty bulletin board. This is what we have. We have B&A online, the full package. Here are the titles. Here's how you access it. Okay. And I also announced it via an email. Sent out email, this is what we have. If you have any questions, contact me. The feedback I got was generally minimal because on the faculty bulletin board, as you can imagine, you're competing with a lot of different things. And unless people are specifically looking for that online resource, they're generally not going to notice that. And email, the problem with email is that we get so many emails every day. And unless, once again, you have a current need for that, you're going to delete it or overlook it. I got very little responses to the email. And as you know, if people haven't been keeping up with the email here, is that it just accumulates and accumulates, and if you don't deal with it immediately, it's going to get buried. Third, we held training and informational sessions. We either brought a vendor in or one of the reference librarians, it's usually me, would go into the faculty dining room and show them what stuff we had and how to use it. Now, generally, they were not well attended, and they weren't attended at all by non-librarians unless we provided some sort of meal. Interesting thing about the training sessions were that the people who usually came to training sessions, the non-librarians that is, were generally people that never used computers at all. And they came, as I started to feel, they came because it was a free meal. And if there wasn't a free meal, very few faculty members would come at all. Now, so what I changed the focus of these sessions from training to information. So when I hold these sessions, it's to tell them we have this product. It's not to show them how to use it, is that and tell them the benefits of using this. And instead of focusing on one, I do at the beginning of every semester, tell them about the new products that we have. We have Matthew Bender, B&A, Hein Online, EBSCO Host, and this is how you can access it. Third, we created easy access pages, and I'll show you examples of that. Now, this is the one I originally created. Okay, it's a little icon on everybody's desktop when you sign on to the Law School Network, and all you have to do is click on the icon, and you go directly into that database. One of the problems that people have complained about is that they don't know how to access some of these because you have to click too many places. You have to know what you're looking for in the OPAC, and you have to click 4 or 5 times to get there. So I thought I'd make it easier and just put it all on one page on their desktop. Problem is, with this, is that if you don't know what these databases are, it's a problem. A lot of people never use Wiley Inner Science. They never use EBSCO Host, and therefore, when they looked at this and say, well, what is this garbage? I can barely find Westlaw and Lexis here, and that's all I really want. It gets buried. So what we did, we went to this, which I think is absolutely ugly as sin, but a little bit more information. You can still click and get right into the database. It has a little bit more information about what's in the database. And this was modeled after all the electronic resources pages I have on our law school server. It talks about what's in each, a brief description of what's in the database. Whether this is effective or not, I'm not sure, because still it doesn't give you enough information like to determine whether you actually need to look in that. And I'm finding most faculty members are looking for a specific database. They're not really kind of searching openly, trying to figure out, looking for new resources. So the University of Florida has what we have, a database locator. And what this is, it classifies all the databases, which are about 500 right now, that we have access to, not only through the law school, but through the university. And it classifies them by subject. and you can go and type your database in. It'll take you right into that. So it's another way we have made it easy to access electronic resources. Now, I have a few preliminary observations. I say preliminary, even though I've been doing this for a few years, because I really haven't formulated any firm beliefs of what we should do as reference librarians when it comes to electronic resources. One thing that I noticed is that electronic resources primarily benefit librarians initially, and they burden support staff. And the reason why is that it's hard to get faculty members to take the time to learn these new databases. They say, great, here's a list of things I want you to look up. So now I can use the database and learn how to use it and deliver the product to them. They don't learn how to use it. And there's some things that require their secretaries to do. And I'm finding that with Twin is that as a faculty services librarian, I help them set up their pages and I teach so I can help them figure out how can you use this in your class. But I don't support the web pages. I don't maintain them. I don't add documents. I show them how to do it, but I don't do it myself. So when I introduce a new database, what often happens is that the professor then goes to the secretaries and dump all this work on them. How do I get this from that? Show me how to do this. And therefore, they have to learn something new, and they generally don't like it. And so what happens is that often the resources we have don't get used by anybody but librarians. Okay. Second point I noticed, most faculty members don't know what they need until they need it. They can't anticipate their needs in a year. And what we as reference librarians, the model that we have at my school is very much a reactionary, where we sit and react to their questions. They have a question, we show them how to get answered to. Now, this is the biggest problem that I've found, that the faculty members were largely excluded from the selections process. Oftentimes when we have new faculty come in, they'll give us a list of books that they think we need in our library. And if we're making a decision about whether to terminate a large set or a large treatise, we'll ask the faculty member who deals with that area whether we should keep it or not keep it. But on an ongoing basis, they weren't part of the selection process. And one of the things that I have been urging over the last couple of years is to have a faculty member sit on the selections committee, make it a law school committee like admissions and promotion and tenure. Faculty members sit on the selections committee and help pick resources based on all the constraints that we face. A lot of them aren't aware of our limited budget. They aren't aware of some of the issues between print and electronic. Having them, I think, on the committee will help the process. We don't assume that we know what faculty members want, and they can help us make decisions based on the limitations of our resources. Okay. While the next point is, while the advantages of electronic resources may be obvious, it's not obvious that electronic resources are preferable to print resources in the final analysis. If there's a sales job that we have, I think, as a reference, we have to show them it's okay if we get rid of print. That electronic resources do have advantages, and the advantages outweigh the disadvantages of using electronic resources. And it takes a while for them to understand that, I find, in general. Now, another point, and this seems unrelated to encouraging faculty to use online resources, but I find that at our school, many librarians are tempted to judge their productivity by statistics. How many training sessions did you have? How many brochures did you have? How many websites did you put up? How many faculty members did you talk to today promoting this? Okay. And so what drives a lot of this emphasis on salesmanship is this statistic that looks good. If 25 out of the 50 faculty members are using Twin. Okay. The next point I want to make is that I don't think a faculty liaison program I don't think it's conducive to specialization. I think as reference people, specialization is important, because what I am finding is that time goes on, reference people are becoming more and more jack of all trades. We do a little bit of everything. We become media specialists. We become computer support people. What does reference people do? And I think that having a liaison where you have, each reference person has like 5 or 6 faculty members encourages this kind of generalized knowledge, and nobody becomes a specialized at anything. And what we're going to do at our school is that we're going to get rid of the faculty liaison program, and we're going to designate people who are going to become the specialists. And I'm the specialist when it comes to electronic databases. If you have a question about how to use something, you don't go to any other reference librarian. You go to Vallandigham. Okay, and we're doing that now with subject areas which we hadn't done before: international law, tax law, environmental law. We're going to find specialists. If you have a question about that, about resources, how to access resources, you go to this person. Okay. Now, nothing works like coercion. When it comes to online resources, we find that the best way to get them to use them is to get rid of print, period. And what we did with B&A, since we spent $80,000 or some dollars buying the complete package, is that we couldn't afford to support everybody's office copies and buy the online access. So we forced them to get rid of their office copies, or we told them that we will no longer buy those out of library funds. They're more than welcome to get those purchased by their department or out of their own funds if they want. And it worked. It worked with B&A. And I could tell that people are responding to those. I'm getting a lot of questions about how to use this thing, and how do I sign up for the email highlights? How do I search the indexes? Prior to that, there's really nothing pushing them to use online resources because they came to their faculty box, the daily tax report, or U.S. Law Weekly. There's no reason to use it online. There's no advantage to that. Now, when they no longer have the print access, then they're starting to use this stuff. Okay. I'm finding that faculty members generally have fairly primitive technological skills. I'm finding this over and over, that when I ask them, they call me from Europe and asking, how do I access that and set up the proxy, and I go to internet options and set up. They don't understand that. They're not used to doing that. They don't understand how to delete their cookies. Or one of the problems that we're having, you encounter with Westlaw, using Internet Explorer, if you log in, you can get it on your password, but you try to log out and log in on somebody else's, it'll log you back in on the original one. And the way to get around that is you clear out the cache. But trying to explain that to somebody who has poor technological skills is really, really hard. And so what happens is that it gets pushed onto the secretaries to do a lot of this stuff, and they have so many other things to do, they don't really need to learn how to do all this stuff. Okay, now, one of the things that it became very clear to me is that when I could use a database, I look at it differently than most faculty members, because I use electronic databases all the time, because I help select them. I'm on the committee that selects databases for the state universities of Florida. So we talk about these huge package deals with Kluwer. And so I'm used to going through and evaluating them. And so when I look at this is CCH Tax Research Network, I look at this, and this looks fairly easy. If there are features on here that I don't quite get, I'm not intimidated by that. I'll just click on the link, and I'll get it figured out. EBSCO host. There's nothing intimidating about this here. I know I can click on this, and for full text, I'm not sure if I look at that, I'm not sure what a limiters expanders means, and I can click on that and figure it out. However, with a lot of faculty members, you show them something like EBSCO host, this is what they see. And the lighting's not real good, but this is the cockpit of a 757. It looks too complicated. It's too hard. I don't understand it. It's too much. I can't do it. You do it. I'm glad you got this electronic database, but you use it. And once that goes back to one of my previous points, we are the primary users of them. And secretaries, once again, a lot of the work gets pushed onto them. They have to learn this stuff. Now, one of the questions that keeps coming up is that what is the role of a reference librarian? Before we start pushing and promoting electronic database, it has to ask the question, what do we do? What is our job? Now, these are three different things that I noticed that people have, at least at my school, of images of reference librarians. In the upper left-hand corner, we have somebody. It's basically the reference desk model. You sit there and you wait for people to come with questions, and you answer the questions. The one on the right, the guy with the vacuum cleaners, that now reference librarians, if we don't sit at the reference desk all day, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to be proactive. So we have to go push our products. We have to go sell our databases. We have to convince people that they really need to use this new treatise. And the one I like in the middle is one that faculty members like to use on me. They flatter me, tell me that this research is just so complicated. They need, a sage like Vallandigham. Only he can access this stuff. So they flatter me and say, I can't learn this myself. You have to really help me. And so what happens, once again, is that they benefit us. They don't benefit faculty members. Now, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Jim right now.
Good morning. I'm a little bit strange person to have talking to a CALI group. I have a strong neo-Luddite strain in me. I'm a gardener. I think that you... Oh, really? Nobody ever has trouble hearing me. I'm a gardener, and I think that you dig in the dirt. I don't think that you need, all sorts of technology to do everything. And so it's a little bit strange for me to talk about this. The same thing happens a little bit with particularly with faculty using online resources, and I think one of the main reasons Chris touched on it. In law firms, Lexis and Westlaw are wonderful because there are very few law firm libraries that have all the resources you might want. I know I worked when I was in practice. We had the best law library in about 300 miles, and we had all the cases and we had all the statutes. We had all the regs I wanted. But we had probably 6 full runs of law reviews. That was all. Not that we needed them. But there are very few law firms that have lots of law reviews. There are very few law firms that have monographs, that have a good treatise selection. So Westlaw and Lexis were great for law firms because it gave those lawyers access to a broad array of resources. Faculty don't need that. Faculty, I know both of the schools where I've worked, there were cases, statutes, and most law reviews within pretty close reach of the faculty. We also had, at both of the schools where I've worked, the big and well-used looseleaf services were near the faculty. The faculty had their own, if not office copies in any of the schools where I was, but the faculty had their own CCH tax set. And it can be difficult to convince people who have learned to do research in paper to go and use electronic resources when the book is 30 feet away. So one of the issues really is for a lot of faculty members is why should they? The case, I find that faculty often use Lexis and Westlaw to print law review articles and cases, but that's so they can take them home. It's not because the books aren't right there. The books are right there. And if they're not going to take them home, they're probably just as happy reading them in the book. Because I think many of us have found that despite what we like to think about cutting down all of the trees, most of us do print stuff out and walk away with it on paper. I certainly am as guilty of that as anybody, and I probably love trees more than most of you. So what I see in the faculties I've worked with is they print stuff out so they can take it away. Beyond that, when I liked what Christopher said about coercion. That's really often when faculty sort of have to sort of deal with using an online version of material that they already use in print. That's, you know, and to me, I guess I see faculty needs for online resources in sort of two categories. Sometimes you have faculty who really want to learn how to use something. They come to you. They're fairly motivated to do that. They've made the decision. For some reason or other, they've decided they want to switch to an online version of something. And those people are fairly easy to work with because they're motivated. They've decided it. They're not fighting you. They've come to you to get some help. The more interesting people to work with are people who are being forced. And I was in a situation where we really felt like we needed to get rid of some copies of the standard federal tax reports. They were taking up too much space. They were nearly impossible to keep filed because the faculty members were walking off with them. They didn't have to check them out of this little faculty library that we had. They didn't have to check them out. They just carried them to their offices. So we didn't even know where they were to do the filing. And those have to be filed every week. Or those ought to be filed every week. They really, you know, you really can mess up a tax service if you don't keep up with the filing. We couldn't do it. There was no way because we didn't know where the books were. They're awfully expensive. They take up a lot of space. They take a lot of labor. So in trying to get rid of, we were trying to work down to one paper copy. That was that was a case where we wanted to get the faculty who regularly use the Standard Federal to start using the online CCH. And I was a tax lawyer. I'll tell you, even for somebody who doesn't like computers, online CCH is a beautiful creature. It's wonderful. Everything is there. And one of the things I try to tell faculty sometimes is you really should think of it as like the loose leaf service. What the loose leaf service was for us 20 years ago when I was in practice, it was a one-stop thing. You know, the litigation people were sort of all over the place, reading these silly cases from other states. We just went to the Standard Federal. I did have to get my cases someplace, some of the cases someplace else. But most of my research happened in one set. And you thought of it as a sort of one-stop place that you know, tax lawyers were so special that we had this book that we just went to one spot. We knew we were special. CCH Online has all of that and more. There really is so much in that resource. And without meaning to do a lot of advertising for them, there's not much good reason not to use it. And the additional advantage that it has over paper is it's all updated every day. So if you are following legislation, or you're watching for a revenue ruling, or there's something you're waiting for, you don't have to wait for it to get sent to CCH, printed by CCH, mailed out by CCH, received by the tech services staff, processed by the tech services staff, and gotten out onto the shelves or into the current awareness stream. All that takes time, and news used to look like a week to 10 days later. Well, now it's all same day. So for anybody who wants current information, there's not a lot of reason not to use an online version. That could be one of the things that you can use to sell online resources. Really fast and paperless current awareness. I know when I was in practice, that was back right before the dawn of time, and we had Prentice Hall and CCH and RIA, and most legislation, we would get 6 to 8 pieces of paper across the desk announcing it. It used to sort of amaze me how many times I would read the same thing. It also intimidated me how enormous the stack in my inbox would get. And what we would do is, I had a goddess of a secretary, and every once in a while, about every 4 weeks, I would say, Mona, just take it all away. I just didn't even see it because it was too much. One of the nice things about CCH, or Westlaw or Lexis even, for current awareness is you can just look for, you can get it in one spot. They can send it to you via email if you want it, or you can just teach yourself to go and look it up every day or when you want to check it. You don't get all the paper on the desk, and it's just right there on the computer. So I think there are a lot of advantages that you can sell in terms of current awareness. And for people who are reluctant to move to an electronic resource, that's one of the sort of tricks that I use, is to find something that they can use. And I would say that that's generally for people who don't want to move from the paper resource to the electronic resource. I've been doing this for 4.5, 5 years. I try to manipulate them into it by sort of giving them something that they want. Again, the recalcitrant user, the recalcitrant faculty member who really would rather you keep the book, they're not happy. They don't want to learn this. They already have research skills. Faculty members are good at research. That's why they're there. And like the rest of us, they don't necessarily want to change. They will often look at an online resource, and as Christopher showed you with the cockpit, they think it looks very daunting. And one of the things I try to do is, particularly for people who work in areas where there are loose leaf services commonly used, I try to remind them how daunting those things used to look. I remember the first time I opened Standard Federal, and I had no idea. It took me 6 months to get the paragraph numbers and the page numbers straight. I still teach that to students, how you work in a loose leaf service, where you find stuff in them. There's really a lot of skill involved in learning to use a loose leaf service in any of the big topic areas. So I try to use that on faculty. I also say, you're really good at this, and if you can master the paper version of the Standard Federal tax reports, you can certainly master CCH Online. For one thing, you're not going to get back pain picking them up. You're not going to rip those silly onion skin pages out. It's not going to, the set's not going to collapse in your lap and spill pages all over your floor. And really, once people get used to it, they're not more daunting than the loose leaf services. That may be less true. That may not work as well when people are just doing case law research. But for any of the regulated areas, the online versions can be a lot simpler to use. And so what I do is I try to point out that once they get used to it, it's going to be just like the loose leaf service. It's going to take a little bit of learning time. There's going to be some learning curve, and then they're going to know how to use it. The other thing that I do is I try to give them some other things that they can use. I've already mentioned current awareness. You can get really fast current and paperless current awareness. Sometimes I'll show people how to set up a clippings file. You don't need to keep all this stuff floating around your office. Just copy the paragraph or two that you want to keep, paste it into a Word document. I remind them to put down the citation information, so when they decide they want to use this in an article, they don't have to wander around and see where they found it. And then they've got a clippings file of the current awareness materials. If I have a little bit of advance notice, and I often try to make some advance notice, there's some things that I do. And let me back up just a second. I certainly sometimes have faculty say, I need something right now. Can you come and show me how to use this database on Lexis? Or can you come and show me how to use CCH banking materials? If someone has a deadline, I try to encourage them not to do it then. All of us get more impatient when we have deadlines. I know that nothing in my computer works when I have a deadline. Is it the computer? Is it me? I think even I can figure that out. It's not a good time to teach anybody how to learn anything, or how to use anything. If an article is due in 3 weeks, you don't need to go and start learning online resources. They need to be focusing on the article. And at that point, I'm likely to say, why don't you just let me get that for you? And then when the article's done, let's go back and start learning some. Because it's just not going to work. I know what happens with me. I hit at the machine. I type even less well when I'm on deadline than when I'm not. I fuss at the at what's built into computers, a sort of trial and error approach. That works when you're calm. It doesn't work very well when you're stressed by a deadline. So I try to get people to hold off until they're not under serious time constraints. Doesn't always work. If we can wait, and I even try, even people who aren't under deadline, I try to get them to wait 24 hours. I'll come up with a meeting, or I can't come right now. I've got something going on. Let's do it tomorrow at 2. Because I like to have a little bit of time, particularly if it's an area that I don't know very well. In tax, I'm fairly comfortable. In banking, I don't have a clue. I want a little time to go and look at the resource myself and see what I can. For one thing, it just helps me to know what I'm talking about when I'm working with them. The other thing is that I can find some gifts. I can find some sort of little carrots to offer them. If I have a little time to look through, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep reverting to tax examples because they're the ones I know the best. But something like Westlaw and Lexis have quite a lot. CCH has even more. You have all sorts of little goodies that tax lawyers might like there. I know years ago I used Westlaw a little bit in the mid-'80s when we still had dedicated terminals, and it was the only place in the world where you could get private letter rulings. Well, now they're printed on paper also. And I think they're available on both Lexis and Westlaw. But it used to be the case that the only place in the world where you could get private letter rulings was on Westlaw. And there's still some things like that. So I want to get in and see if I can find some things that the faculty member wants. So one of the important things to know is, what does the faculty member intend to use this for? If I can get some information, this is just reference interview stuff. What do you want to use it for? What materials are you likely to need? What direction is your research going? So I can have some sense of what they're likely to use. So then I can go in, look at the resource, and pick out some of the things that I think they're going to use. Because it allows me to give them some sort of goodies. Again, with all of these, this is, for most people, legal materials are not fun. They're work. Faculty, with some exceptions, they're mostly doing this as a matter of work. If they were having fun, they'd go fishing, or they'd go to the beach, or they'd go skiing, or they'd read a book. It's certainly true for me. These are work resources. They're not fun to do, and it's not an activity that you would do if you didn't have to. And I think that's true for most faculty as well as for most of the rest of us. So finding things that they're really going to be happy about having, and I can't make any broad generalizations about that. It depends a lot on what their research is. But I do think that's an important way to pull someone in who really doesn't want to go there. Find some things that will save them time. I mentioned sort of keeping a clippings file for current awareness. That will save them time because they're going to have this information there in a word processing file, and they can just go to it and lift it right back into an article. So there's a certain amount of homework that I want to do before I talk to people about a resource, particularly if they don't really want to use it, if they're using it because we're getting rid of the paper. Some sort of general things that I think are important, and the most important one of all is I really try to avoid using any kind of jargon or computerese. I remember how I felt when I avoided computers for a very long time. Aside from my one little searching of private letter rulings summer in the mid-'80s, I didn't touch a computer again until 1996. I was a gardener. I didn't need a computer until 1996. There was nothing in the garden that wanted a computer. I would argue that there still isn't. So when I was trying to learn how to do this, I had a friend who gave me a computer. and who was showing me how to do this stuff. And he's a really nice guy, and I see him all the time. But he used all this jargon with me. And, you know, to me, an icon is a thing in the Russian church, and it looks like a saint, right? There's no reason to call that an icon for somebody who isn't very computer savvy. And remember, for a lot of people working in faculties, they haven't been spending their time poking around computers. And we don't mean old. I just mean 40 and over. That's not looking very old to me anymore. I'm a good deal older than 40. Now, with 30-year-old faculty members, a lot of what we're talking about is obviated. They're very comfortable with computers. They go to computer resources easily. But for people who learned in paper and who've been doing a lot of research in paper for many years, they don't want to make that change. It's a stress-producing shift for them. Talking about it in a language they don't understand is not going to help. I'm really bad at the deplorable American tendency to use words like stuff. There's all this stuff here. But in this instance, it's a lot better than using computer jargon. Everybody at least knows, they may complain about my grammar, but then I can complain that they don't understand what I'm talking about. So it's not an icon, it's a button, or it's a thing, or it's a thingy. I think it's really important to do that, particularly with faculty who aren't very accustomed to using computers all the time. And just because they use email doesn't mean that they have a lot of computer skills. One of the things I've discovered is that it's so important to faculty members now to seem with it enough to use email that I know some really rather mature faculty who have their secretaries do email for them so that they appear to be able to do email. Another thing I like to do is I like to work with people in their offices. Now, sometimes they're going to come to my office, and that certainly is all right if they're willing to put up with the. I don't keep a neat office. I'm no decorator inside, and if they're willing to put up with the garbage all over my desk and all over my floors, and I'll lift the pile out of the chair and let them sit down. If they're willing to put up with that, that's all right. But my preference is to go to them, because that has them working on the computer that sits on their desk. It's in their place, and I actually, by the way, also want them to be clicking away. I want to sit back and maybe I'm going to tell them where to click, but I think that's valuable that they do it because as with so many things, there's a certain muscle knowledge about all of that. It's not all in your head. Some of that you hope to develop some muscle knowledge about finding things on the computer. So I want them to start doing that, and particularly if you've got somebody who really doesn't use a computer very much, they really need just the physical activity of clicking on the icons, the thingies. I want to make very clear with faculty that I'm going to offer them a lot of support. So we're going to do this today for 30 minutes. By the way, I think it's often wise to stop at about 30 minutes. I can be flexible about that, but oftentimes that's about long enough. Particularly because this can be fairly technical, trying to find your way around. To somebody who doesn't use the resource very much, all the pages look alike. 30 minutes is usually enough. And I'll say, look, we're going to do this for 30 minutes, but why don't we do this again in 3 days? Or it's very important to me to tell folks that they can call me anytime. The nice thing about a law school network is we can talk on the phone and use a computer at the same time. So if you're having trouble, call me up and we can walk through it. I can pull it up on my screen or I can come up to your office. So I think it's very important to offer a lot of support while somebody's learning a new database. I try to sort of sympathize with them, and I think here you use what you have, and we don't all have the same experiences in life or the same talents and lacks of talent. But one of the things, for instance, that I use is I say, I'm not good at computers. I'm good at word searching, and I'm good at these things that I use on a fairly regular basis. But you get beyond there, I don't know how to use Medline. I don't know how to use most of the databases on campus. I know the legal ones. Legal ones in WorldCat, and that's my whole universe. So I say, I just learned this. You can learn this too. I don't think, particularly for people who have really well-developed research skills, they don't like feeling like they can't do this. These are people who have mastered legal research, and suddenly they're in this sort of land where the ground is moving under their feet. I think it's a nice thing and a more efficient way to sympathize with that and to establish some common ground. I was new at this too, and it was hard for a few days, but after I started using it, it comes to you, and I think that can be assuring to people. I think it is wise to be frank about the learning curve. To tell people, don't say, "Oh, this is easy. This is easy." I remember Newman with my new computer. "Oh, this is easy. Play solitaire for a day, and then you'll know how to click, and then you can do everything." Well, it wasn't true. It wasn't true. You're not, if you've never used CCH banking law, the database, it's not going to come to you in a day. You're going to have to find the stuff you need to work with it some. And that brings me to what I think is one of the most important things, particularly with people who don't use a computer much. I always try to get people to play on the computer. Some years ago, I did some reading about that and certainly some thinking about the importance of play in life. And it's not anywhere clearer to me how important it is than it is with computer skills. I really am a rather good word searcher, and I learned to do that looking for plant information on Google. It has nothing to do with the law. As I told you, I'm a gardener, and the world of gardens and plants and botany and horticulture is much vaster than the law. It's much more complex than the law. By the way, if you ever want to provoke a law professor, you can say that to them, and you will get usually this sort of shocked look on their faces. Horticulture is really more complex than tax law? Well, tax law didn't start till 1913. It's a very complex subject, and the information that's out there, there's a lot of legal information, there's a lot of medical information. I assume that there's some other areas where there's lots of information online. But in many areas of human endeavor, there's not that much. There's a lot of garbage out there about plants. There are a lot of places where you can buy plants. But in terms of real information, there's not much. You really have got to be good to find it, particularly for obscure. I'm this sort of nerdy, obsessive gardener. I want to know obscure things about obscure plants from obscure parts of the Himalayas, right? And it's a great way to teach yourself how to use a computer. Now, not everybody's going to look for plant information, but a really good thing to ask somebody to do, or to encourage someone to do, is to choose their hobby or their interest and tell them to go and find that. Don't look for banking law this week. Look for golf stuff or fishing stuff. And for a lot of hobby information, there is information on the web. It may not be very high quality, but there's stuff out there. And I find that I certainly learn faster, and I think other people often do too, if they're doing something at play than when they're doing something at work. And, most of you have had the experience where you start playing around on the computer, and suddenly you look up and you've been doing it for 4 hours. And it wasn't work. You were having fun doing it. That's what you sort of want to get out of particularly the more mature faculty members who don't spend a lot of time on a computer. That will get them really using it. That's that kind of where you get sort of lost in the subject matter, and you're clicking around, and you're not all that aware of the computer. You're aware of trying to get to the information. And I think people learn best doing something like that. Certainly learn more efficiently than when they're trying to find case law. I think it's really important to talk with faculty about the trial and error nature of computer work. It took a long time for me to be comfortable with that. I think I'm supposed to do things right. I'm not Jewish, I'm not Catholic, but everybody thinks that I am. And because of all this guilt, I'm supposed to do it right. I'm supposed to do it right. I was raised Baptist. We get it there too. It was very hard for me to get used to the notion that I was just supposed to keep clicking. You don't have to do it right. You just have to keep clicking. And I think for more mature faculty members who haven't spent a lot of time on a computer, that's a hurdle that they have to get over too. An example I like to use, though, is, remember, in legal research, you do a lot of that, too. I remember if I got outside of tax, and I occasionally had to do, my law firm had this sort of notion that you were supposed to be a generalist, even though you were supposed to be a specialist. They hired me as a specialist, but they wanted me a generalist, too. So 10% of my time was supposed to be spent doing things other than tax work. So occasionally I would get these weird old memos, research projects, and I didn't know anything about them. And one of the things I remember was trying to find out something about some law that had to do with children. So you go to the index, and you look under children. Well, it's not there. So what do? You don't toss the book. You try child. It's not there. And slowly you realize it's under minor child. Highly unintuitive, but that's where the information in most West indexes is for stuff about children. And there you are. You're sort of doing trial and error. That's like continuing to click. So again, if somebody's saying, I can't find any of this stuff, just use that example for them. You do the same thing in a book. You certainly do the same thing in legal indexes are just awful. And they always were, and they still are. And finding things in legal databases is not a lot better. But you just sort of keep clicking at it and keep trying things. And I think it's useful to encourage people to be comfortable with that, and to at least to encourage them to expect it. Because if they expect it, it's not going to bother them so much. Just keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. You're not going to break the computer. You're not going to do anything wrong. Just keep clicking, and you'll get there. And again, I think it's really important to walk in and give faculty something of value that they can use. One that I forgot to mention earlier, more and more, I know when CCH tax stuff came out, you could browse regulations. That was a beautiful thing. Word searching in a regulation, if you're a tax lawyer, is completely useless. You only have 4 words: shares, shareholder, stock, and corporation. There are only 4 words in tax, right? Word searching helps you not at all. And it's actually very rare that you have unique terms in tax. I suspect the same thing is true in securities and in banking. For those people, word searching is not all that great. Finding other ways that they can search may be a lot more valuable to them than showing them word searching. CCH came out then with the ability to browse through things. And finally, Lexis and Westlaw jumped in too with the table of contents features. And for people who are searching in regs, that's a lot more valuable than word searching, because if you're down to any reasonable level of specificity, all the same words are in all the regs. If you've got, I don't know, 20 regs on a topic, they all have the same words. Word searching will bring them all up every time. And browsing is the way you find stuff in regulations. So it's important to show people how to do those things that they really need. And we're getting close here, so I think I better stop. One of the things we thought about was we wanted to hear some of the experiences that you guys have that have worked for you. So if somebody has, and questions too.
One of the things I wanted to bring up is that this coming up here, we are moving into new classroom buildings. They're going to be wired. We have a laptop requirement for the first time, and we don't have a computer lab anymore. We have 6 computers, and it's going to be used for reference purposes. There won't be a computer lab, so they have to utilize their laptops and wireless connections. One of the things that we're trying to get is faculty members to integrate this technology in the classroom as a reference. I'm not an educational technologist. I'm not really care about how to use LCD projectors. Other people that don't do that. But how can they access information? And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up twin pages for everybody, regardless of where they ask for them. And I'm going to go to a faculty member and say, this is what you have. I notice you have like a course pack. You can put all this stuff on the web on your twin page, and you can put it up in your projector, and you can look at this stuff online. You don't have to read with you don't have to have them flip through the books. You can use this stuff in classrooms. So what I'm trying to do is not trying to create a need that they don't have, but they need to have access information. That's why they're included in the course, and just offer them another way. And this is slowly trying to wean them from reliance on print, because the day's coming when in our library that we're going to have one copy of everything, and it's going to be in closed reserve. And that's what we're thinking about right now with our tax sets. Everything's online that we use, almost everything. Everything else is going to be in. And to preserve the integrity of the print, we're going to put those in closed reserve. So we're trying to get people onto online resources. And it's really not an age thing. There's a lot of new people that are as resistant to using technology as the older one. We have some guy, he always come to our luncheons when we had talked about databases. He used a manual typewriter. And some of the younger people don't like technology because it somehow interferes with their pedagogy. People are going to do their chat, and there's this one professor, one of the youngest ones we have, if they see anybody using their computer other than to look at the course materials, they get suspended for 2 days. So it's going to be a process of for 2 classes. So it's going to be it needs to be a paradigm shift of how we actually teachers teach in the classrooms to figure out what technology is going to be used for. And I think that right now, when they use databases for research, they mainly use it for retrieval purposes. They use Hein Online because it's easier to get a Harvard Law Review from 1910 than to walk. Now it's across town since we moved our library off campus during renovation. It's easier to go on Hein Online. But to actually do more substantive research, they don't do a whole lot of that themselves online, I'm finding. And that's where I think that we reference librarians continue to be useful. I mean, we can help you formulate your searches much easier, but when it comes to retrieval of things, do that yourself. Don't go through the library or through your secretary. There's always a gap between when you need it and when we can produce it for you. Learn how to do that yourself. But the more challenging things, I think that's the value of reference librarians. Now, any questions about anything? I know we got a little philosophical, but I did, about what reference librarians are for. Yes? Right. Well, the problem is what's happening now, since I'm a Faculty Services Librarian, a faculty member will contact the another reference librarian, and they just pass off the request to me because I'm the faculty. I do all the retrieval, and I do all the electronic stuff, so it made no sense. The only thing that they ever did was if they could find an immediate answer online, then they would help them. But usually they pass all the requests, so I'm just cutting out the middleman. Well, what I would like to do is that we don't have the faculty staff, and the current reference staff they're close to retirement. We're waiting for them to leave. We're not going to specialize until they leave in the next few years. So we're going to have the tax person. We're going to eliminate the Faculty Services Librarian, and we're going to have a tax person. We have international law. We're going to have somebody do this. And so you go directly to that person if you have a question in that field. I just don't think that faculty, and because of we're passing requests back and forth, that the liaison system really works very well. And the faculty figure out among the reference staff who knows how to get stuff anyway, so it never really works.
Mm-hmm. All the usual stuff. What I can't get them to do is use any of the stuff that's available through the library. I think is phenomenal. There's so much. I mean, just go to InfoTrack and look at all the stuff that's available online, full text. Just poke the button at home, you're done. It's really great. I can't get them to do that. They'll say, "Oh, cool, go do that," because I am in fact the faculty secretary, and I do all of the twin pages. I set up twin. Probably have 30 a semester that I am co-faculty for because I set them up, but then that leaves me in the position of, oh, cool, post this article, go find that statute, post that article on all 30 classes every semester, and that, you know. But I can't get them to, I mean, they'll go do the Westlaw and the Lexis stuff back and look at the endless numbers of things that are available online.
What do I do about that? What I do is that I show them how to do it. When they ask me requests, we have serial solutions, which they can go in there and figure out if we have this journal electronically. I will say, you don't need to come to me for this. I'll come to your office and I'll show you access to that. And the people are generally open to that. If they know that they can get, you know, some physics journal going to Wiley, they'll start going to that and not asking me for that because it's easier. It saves time. And I always make it more difficult for them because I make them wait a little bit.
All the steps and say, see, isn't this cool? Look at how fun that is. But the next time they want something, they'll still call me and say, oh, would you see if you can? And, you know, so there I am. But no matter how easy I make it for them, they still, well, let's just, they're lazy.
I find that it takes 4 or 5 times of showing them how to do something before it sinks in. This one person, it was this one journal that was on Project Muse or something like that, and it took me about 5 times of showing them how to access it. That I even show them how to, you know, put it on their toolbar.
Right. Yeah.
And then they start. They don't come to me and ask me anymore because they know how to use it. But it just takes a while, just because they struggle. I think a lot of faculty members, and based on where they came from, what institution, struggle with the idea that this is something that faculty members should be doing. That's why we have librarians to be doing this stuff.
And the librarian. I think librarians are the most wonderful. Because when I get really wiped with this stuff, I'll send it to the library and say, go ask Chris because, you know, she really knows more about this than me. And, you know, tag you guys are it because, you know, there's but there are so many wonderful things available on the library homepage that don't get it. And they'll use Westlaw and Lexis, but that's it. I mean, I can't even get them to use Hein Online.
No. Sometimes I wonder about the quality of the research they actually do.
Oh, it's really
because
cool
they don't. They pick up all their citations from what the thing that we'll always use.
Let me break in just a second. Thanks, everybody. If you have questions, come up.
Do you have the slides that you did? Because I really like the layout.
No, but I'll put them on my webpage and my thing. Yeah, I could ask them to put them on the CALI page. I didn't do that. Okay.
I'd like my librarians to see them because I think that might help them in some of their presentations.